The Balkan War is shrouded in mystery. But now, a decade after the peace accords, a portion of the records was finally released. I quickly got a hold of it. Wanting more details, I acquired information from unknown sources. There was a reason for my obsession. The roots of the war lie in the Balkan Federal Law Review that took place in 1988. Belka, suffering from economic strife, permitted its eastern territory to secede, and the Republic of Ustio was born. But Belka's economic troubles did not subside. Meanwhile, taking advantage of the situation, the world superpower Osea continued to flourish. Amidst the economic panic, an extreme right-wing party took power within Belka, aiming to restore strength and stability to the nation. And on March 25th, 1995, with the discovery of natural resources in Ustio, Belka began to invade its neighbors. It was the beginning of the Balkan War. Unprepared, each country fell quickly before the might of the legendary Balkan Air Force. In just a few days, they occupied all territories except for the mountain range. In response, the occupied Ustio government military placed all their hopes in a joint operation between Osea and the foreign mercenary forces. This, of course, can be found in any history book. But I noticed a strange similarity in the materials I gathered. There were several accounts about a mercenary, all followed by the code word, demon. But most of the information was incomplete. Still, I was intrigued. I decided to pursue the history of the Balkan War through this mercenary. I was certain I would find something there. Would it be the hidden truth behind the war? Or just another battlefield legend? I wasn't able to meet the mercenary himself. Actually, it's questionable if he ever did exist. But, thanks to some old friends in the military, I was able to track down several of the individuals who knew him. Solo-Wing Pixie is one such man. A liaison officer by the name of Hector Lumen rolls a projector into a conference room. In this room sat General Shepard and 9 high-ranking members of the IUN. These are the members of the Counter-Terrorism Board of Officers. Nice of you to finally show up. We have a list of names here to add to the squad. They aren't superstars like the others, but they're aces in their own right. Hector looked behind him at a whiteboard with several names and call signs of some of the best pilots in the IUN's roster. Well, we've been discussing it for a while. Who do you like? None of them. He erased all the names on the board and a commotion erupted in the room. Finally, Shepard calmed them down. Lumen, we've been filing through these names all week while you've been tracking down your dream team. You won't even discuss them? Don't tell us you have a pilot in that file you're holding better than any of these guys. That's exactly what I'm telling you, Amy. Why don't we add some real high-powered offense to this team? You're saying we don't have that already? You haven't seen anything yet. Hector turned on the projector, pointed it at the whiteboard, and put down the file of a pilot. The file was clearly old with some outdated information. Meet Sean Mason. Lumen? In a minute, General. This man was top of his class at the Kellerman Institute. Kellerman? How old is this guy? He's a little up there in age, but he may be the greatest pilot the world has ever seen. It says on the board he's 50. You sure he still has it? If he's so great, how come we haven't heard of him? Oh, you've heard of him. Just not his name. He received high praise after graduating in 1992. He then had a short stint in the Belkan Air Force where he received more praise and accolades. A Belkan? Are we trying to annex them? He was born in Belka, but grew up in modern-day Ustio. Mason's time in the Belkan Air Force hit a rough patch when he started arguing politics with his superiors. He left shortly after and joined Axe and Hammer in early 1995. The same Axe and Hammer that assisted in the liberation of Ustio. Lumen. Can I speak to you privately? Of course, General. Excuse us. Hector and Shepard walked out of the room and closed the door. You're not seriously considering this. I am, General. No, you're not. Because if you were, you would have also considered the repercussions. If we let him fly, what if he turns on us? He's been rotting in an Osean cell for a quarter century. This guy has no soft spot for the Belkans after what he saw. You think he will for us? If we lose control of Mason, we're looking at a disaster. No disrespect, sir, but I wholeheartedly disagree with you. He wants to be in the sky, like any of the great pilots we have. We just need to give him that chance. The man's committed countless war crimes. He probably is the greatest pilot in the world, so who could stop him if we lose control? No one in that room, except maybe Pity, knows anything about him. I noticed you didn't inform them. Yes, I'll admit he has a checkered past. You could even say disturbing. But look who he's worked for. Belkans and a mercenary organization. Maybe a respectable group could change his tune. Besides, he did save the world. Shouldn't that earn him a second chance? You know why he's locked up? Really? The war crimes won't let him in? They were just something to point to. You ever wonder how Anthony Palmer escaped prison time? He cut a deal, right? No. Palmer was protected from on high. Bristow likely was too until he became a public face. A world with no boundaries had political allies from all over the Osean continent. Who were they? The OIA never got anything concrete, and the OBI didn't have the guts to investigate its own politicians. But when representatives from Ustio extradited Mason to be tried here, we got suspicious. Very few people actually know his name. Even fewer would know he even existed if not for that documentary. So when he was sentenced in 1996, it didn't even make the papers. So you're saying we locked him up for life over a conspiracy? Exactly. That's why I don't want him within 100 miles of any airplane. He has motive to attack us. Why the hell would we give him the means? Hector paused. He didn't know this went so deep. He wasn't giving up on him, though. He doesn't know he was set up. The charge is legit, right? Technically, yes. Maybe he can be convinced then. Like I said, he wants to be in the sky. I think he'll work with us. You're making a mistake, Lumen. Let's let the board decide. Hector reached for the doorknob to walk back in, but he was stopped by Shepard grabbing his wrist. Everything I just told you stays between us. I can agree to that. So what can I tell them? You can tell them who he really is. Leave it at that. Alright then. They both walked back in. Shepard sat down and Hector went back to the front of the room. Sorry about that. Shepard and I were making lunch plans. Hector successfully eased some of the tension in the room. So, enough beating around the bush. Meet the Demon Lord. Another commotion took over the room. He's real? He's alive? Calm down, guys. You can get his autograph after he's joined the squad. Where is he? Serving time for war crimes at Alfred Federal Prison. I think we can get him out. Hold on. You're not seriously suggesting a prisoner in the squadron, are you? He's been a prisoner for a long time. How do you know he's still as good as he used to be? If I may, flying skill and muscle memory don't just go away. If he really was as good as they say, I doubt there's anyone else better than him. We've been all over how erratic Belkans act in desperation, and quite frankly, there is no better pilot against them than this. They aren't just erratic, they're dirty. So we know they'll fight dirty. This guy likely learned his bad habits from them. I think he's perfect to give them a taste of their own medicine. I appreciate the enthusiasm, Commander Bowman, but stooping to their level won't help public opinion. The annexation will not be popular in much of the world. Even if Mason's ruthlessness helps win battles, we would likely find ourselves with more enemies. We can make sure it doesn't go too far. His aggression doesn't have to be a liability if we can control it. How can we do that? Won't we be at his mercy if we're stupid enough to give him a plane? We've had criminals in penal units prior, and it worked to great success. We just have to make sure the AWACS in charge can shut off his FCS if needed. Thank you! That's the type of positive thinking we need. It's not like we'll have no control over him. Belkans are tough SOBs. We could use an ace in the hole. Was a pun intended there? Slightly. I don't like this. We gave you a couple dozen great pilots for you to look at. Instead, you ignored them for a potentially dangerous and defective pilot. Is your only point against ours that we can control his FCS? My point is, we have zero reason to not take advantage of every opportunity at our disposal. At worst, he's a minor mishap, but at best, he will be an incredibly valuable asset and will ensure our victory in potential battles we'll wage in the future. I don't see enough of a risk to waste a potentially game-changing asset. Likewise, for whatever risk Cypher has if we bring him in, it pales in comparison to the risk there is if we don't. We know how Belka will act when they get desperate. Alright, I think our points have been made. Let's put this to a vote. All in favor? All opposed? The motion is passed. Well played. I'll have our secretary arrange for you to fly to Outred tomorrow. I'll also arrange his immediate release. I'll leave the terms up to you. Meeting adjourned. Everyone walked out except for Shepard and Daniel Bellini, a pilot in the American Air Force. The others filed out while looking at Hector with either approval or disapproval. Shepard was the first to speak to Hector. He stopped and looked closely at him. This better work. He left the room. Hector wasn't fazed, though. He was actually pretty happy with himself. Daniel then walked up to him. Thanks for staying behind. I wanted to talk with you about someone else. Yeah, I did too. When I met with Jonathan, he mentioned a talented young American flight lead he's been following. You know anything about him? He's likely talking about Captain Travis Moore. He is an incredible pilot. Perfect for this coalition, but, what's the problem? You took his name off the board with all the others. I thought you weren't interested. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know his name and there were a lot of names on there. I was trying to put on a bit of a show. Yeah, I could tell. Before you walked in here, he seemed to be the favorite. We'll discuss it while you're in Outred, and in all likelihood you'll be going to Ameria after that. Sounds good. Looks like I'll have a guest with me to meet more, by the way. I'll make sure it's set up. Thanks for your support. Say hi to the wife for me. I will. See ya, Hector. They both left the room and went their separate ways. Hector knew the team would likely be completed if both trips went well. A couple days later, Hector arrived in Outred. When the liaison plane landed, he was picked up at the airfield and driven straight to Outred Federal Prison. The guards were already informed he was coming and greeted him at the entrance. Good afternoon, Officer Lumen. I understand you'd like to meet one of our guests. That's correct. Have you told him I'm coming? We told him he has a visitor, but he doesn't know who it is. We already have him in the visiting room. Good, thank you. As they walked through the prison, Hector looked outside the windows. The complex was surrounded with high walls and sniper towers, clearly a high-security facility, where some of the most vile criminals in the world are kept. Hector had mixed feelings about Cypher's incarceration here. He knew the conviction was legitimate. Cypher had done terrible things, but the specifics surrounding it are suspect. Not everyone on the board may have agreed with him, but he was of the opinion that some of the great things he did should count for something. The guard escorting him interrupted his thoughts. I don't know what a military man like you wants with a guy like this. I'm guessing you know about his war crimes. What are you gonna do? Put him in jail again? It's classified, but he is a very special interest at the moment. How special could a scumbag like that be? Let me ask you something. How much do you actually know about his military background? I know he was a pilot back in the 90s. I also know he killed many civilians and pilots he had already shot down. He's also a quiet guy, but he has tried to convince several guards and inmates that he would save the world. And you don't believe him? Why would I? He's in here for a reason, after all. You're not saying he's telling the truth, are you? I'm just curious. They arrived at the visitor room. The guard took out a key and let him in. Have fun. Hope you give him a stern talking to. Hector walked in alone, and the guard shut the door behind him. A man was sitting at the table in the room. He was old, with mostly gray hair. His hands were rough and scarred from a lifetime behind bars. He seemed unfazed by the stranger in his presence. Excuse me, Mr. Mason? The man looked up with dim, almost lifeless eyes. It's Captain. The man's growling tone and intimidating presence made Hector flinch slightly. A grizzled mercenary who has fought many battles, with more kills under his belt than those with more service in the military. Some considered him a hero, others saw him as a monster. My apologies, it's a pleasure to meet you, Captain Mason. Who are you, and what do you want? I've got good news for you. If you miss the sky, I have an offer you can't refuse. Unless you prefer rotting down here and not seeing the sky. What's the deal? Hector sat down at the opposite end of the table and looked Cypher in the eyes, sizing him up. This, Cypher, is your chance to see the sky again. Hector opened up his briefcase and handed Cypher a contract. Your ego will be restored to peak condition, and you will fly for the IUN as a wingman for a special squadron until the operation is over. After that, you'll be transported back here with whatever special privileges you request. Cypher took almost no time to look the contract over before snapping back at Hector. Mind telling me why you need me of all people? Must be serious if you higher-ups are getting off your comfy chairs and seeing the real world to come see me. Well, you actually summed up quite a few, I'll say that much. Regardless, let me start by saying you have quite the reputation, don't you? Bombing Belkin... Oh, right. And Ustian civilians. Killing escaping pilots. Yet you had to be the one to save the world. Go figure. Get to the point, will ya? Nothing stops me from taking my time. So I'll say this once. You know what Belka has done in the past, and we plan to stop it once and for all. And annex it. Now you're speaking my language. So, what can you give me if I play along? Nice to know how to get your attention. After this, no longer life in prison. But you'll still have some time left. How much time? If you'll read the contract, the agreement is 5 years. After that, you're done. Bullshit! Let me go free once it's over. It's not like I can get back in the air. 5 years is the minimum. And that's if you give us your best. If not, then we'll just settle for tossing you back in here. Hector leaned in closer to make one last point clear. Let's face it. You either rot in here, or you fly against Belka. There's not an argument here, and I know you well enough to know you'll say yes. Which is why I have a Humvee just outside the prison to pick you up. Right now? Yes! Right now. We have a deal, so quit prolonging and sign the contract. You have to practice after all, Demon Lord. Hector tossed a pen to Cypher. He hesitated briefly, but the answer was obvious, as much as he hated to admit it. Alright, let's get out of here. He signed the contract, and handed it and the pen back to Hector. Good choice. The board will be happy to hear it. Board. Hector put the contract away and pulled out another sheet of paper. He went to the door and banged on it. Guard, you there? Finished already? This is a court order for the immediate release of Captain Sean Mason, signed by Judge Malloy, and Lieutenant General Shepard. The stunned guard grabbed the paper. What the hell? Why him? You know what he's done! I do. I know everything he's done. Are you gonna get those cuffs off? Or do you want to verify with the warden? He knows? Yes, we've talked with him. I'm getting claustrophobic, so hurry up. Yes, sir. The guard begrudgingly freed Cypher from his cuffs, and the two of them were escorted out. As they walked to the outside prison gate, Cypher asked, "What squad will we be flying with if not gone?" Well, given what it represents, and we can't use old names, I know exactly what to call it. See, I believe in fate, Cypher. Even if it doesn't always align, I think now is the time it steps in. And thus, Gone 1. Welcome to Sheik Soul.